Does Vermont conduct any investigation into petitions in order to determine whether people lie or do not lie?
I'm sure they do. I've heard of a few investigations just last year.
And what it was about? Could you tell us?
Well, I've heard of a case when more than 20 exotic dancers filed fraudulent I-360 petitions, and they were all working in the same strip joint. And that's how it became very suspicious, because why would all of them have the same story? And what happened was they just learned from each other about this immigration process, and they've tried to file it, but you know, Vermont saw that. There's an investigation. I don't know how it ends, but that's what's going on right now.
You mentioned you had about a 1% rejection on the
Yes.
I-360. Is that what you think the Vermont Service Center as a whole has, about a 1%?
Well, it used to be. It's different now. But I haven't seen the percentage for the last year, so I don't know.
I've noticed when I was looking at the statistics and studying the statistics on that, they would go to, they would say, well, we had 15%, 20% rejection, but then they would have, the cases would be delayed into the following year. In other words, some of the cases were, I believe, sent back to the local service center for the documentation. So it's hard to get this exact statistics.
Yeah, you're right.
How well women are familiar with this law of self-petitioning?
Almost none of them knows. I have to educate them from the start, because when they come in, they always asking, do I have any chance? There is something you can do for me? And they're so surprised to learn that yes, they can. And for some of them it looks like a miracle, because they were so sure, you know, this husband of theirs has been telling them for years, there is nothing you can do. You have to stay with me. If you leave me, that's it. You'll be deported in shackles. So, and they believed. That's the problem. You know, they come to the United States, they don't know anything, they don't speak English, they don't know about even 911. So they stay at home with an abuser, with this abusive husband, and he's the only source of information.
Why can't they go back to Russia?
Well, some of them been locked in a house. Sometimes a very luxurious house, like I had one in Long Island. She was locked in a villa, an incredible villa. An incredibly rich husband brought her in, and he just locked her. He didn't let her go even for groceries, for nothing, no phone calls.
And why do you think people lock their wives?
Well, that's for the psychiatrist to determine. It's not... There's always a different story, you know, with every case. But I would imagine that some people want control. You know, they feel this need to control another human being. And it's easier to get control over your wife, you know, especially someone who depends on you.
Do you believe that it is easy to lock a person nowadays in modern?
Again, I've seen just a couple of cases last year, and it's unbelievable, but that's what's going on.
What is your opinion about this WAWA law? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it has to be changed? Has to be expanded? What?
No, I think it's a great law. It's wonderful what's going on, because before nobody even, I mean, those abused wives had to go back to whatever they came from, and sometimes leave children here. So this law protects, you know, people from their abusers. That's wonderful. That's a big step, you know, even for the United States. It's a big step forward.
What are the various forms of official abuse that are used to file an I-360?
Forms of abuse?
Yeah, what's the official forms of abuse?
Official forms, okay, there is physical, emotional, moral, sexual abuse. What else? I guess that's it.
Well,
That's the basic
when
forms.
you say official, I mean, something has to be put in a folder, right, I guess,
Mhm.
and it would have to be, what, police reports?
Yes, but I've had cases where there were no police reports, no doctors, nothing. Just the person's statement and maybe a few pictures. And, if the statement really comes from the heart and it's really emotional, the person who reads it in Vermont can really feel that this is true, that was going on. Sometimes it gets approved just like that.
So official evidence in regards to police reports.
It's
protective
very
orders.
important, of course, if you have police reports, but people in Vermont, they understand that immigrant women, men, they don't know. They're afraid to go to police. Sometimes they're even afraid to go to the doctor. Because they think that they'll be deported straight from the, police.
Well, besides the granting of the green card or getting the I guess the abuse petition approved, what other benefits did they receive? I mean, is there any-
All kind of federal benefits. They're eligible for food stamps, Medicaid, free apartments, Section 8. If they live in shelter, it can be paid.
What is Section 8?
Section 8 is a rent stabilized apartment. It's sort of almost free apartment. You can just pay a couple of $100 and get an apartment from.
Do they get job training, job placement?
Well, if they want to, sure. There is a special service like that, yeah.
Now, what kind of jobs would these be? Would this be like a university education, or would it,
Mhm.
what level did they get?
Well, it depends on the level of education of this abused person. I had very educated people. I had who was actually, one was a psychologist, another was a surgeon. And, of course, they didn't go to medical school, but at least they went to, English language school. And that was a big step for them.
And why these people afraid to be deported when they didn't want to go to police? Because if they came here legally and stay here legally, why should be afraid to be deported?
Well, all of them had their reasons for leaving, their country of residence. And it's different in every case. Some of them are supporting minor children or sick parents back home. They have no means to support themselves, let's say in Ukraine. The crisis in the country is incredible, and some children or parents literally starving. So they have to stay here no matter what. So that's what they're afraid of.
Is there an increase in abuse throughout your practice, or it is just the same?
It's hard to say. I would say that in the last few years there is an increase. And I would say it's based on an increase in public awareness of this problem. Because there are some Russian newspapers or Russian radio that have been exploring this issue and people learned. So that's how I got some clients, they read an article in the Russian newspaper about the I-360 petition. And I've got phone calls, my husband or my wife does that, do you think it's an abuse? And sometimes I say yes and sometimes I say no.
Have you heard any cases of false abuse?
False abuse.
Meaning that a woman who wants to get out of marriage claims that she was abused, whereas she is not.
I did, and I rejected a couple of cases. These people came to me, and maybe because of my experience of working in Russia, or maybe something else, but I felt that those are not legitimate claims, and I refused.
Have you heard of any successful cases of false abuse?
Well, I've heard some. I once heard on Russian radio this lady called, and there is a Russian-speaking attorney who advertises on Russian radio all the time, and he's giving advices on the radio. And this lady called and she said that my husband never abused me, but if I go to police, will I get my green card? And he said yes. It was amazing. And I also heard, some attorneys advising people to get married. Doesn't matter to whom.
Marriage.
So that happens.
That is so they can file it.
Yeah, so they can get the green card, so to speak.
Okay.
Or file false abuse.
Afterwards, later.
Yes.
It
Yes.
happens, yeah.
Yes.